Hello friends, my name's Emile and welcome back to some more Gran Turismo for A-Spec. Today we're continuing on with our Let's Play. This is episode 7, and today we're in a bit of a strange part of town. We're actually in the arcade mode today, as we're going to be taking a look at the time trials. This is going to be the last of the pre-recorded, after voiceover parts that we're going to be doing for GT3, and it is on the time trials. Arcade mode, this time does count towards 100% completion in this game, unlike in GT1 and 2. So it does mean we are going to have to go through the arcade mode, including the quick races. However, I will be doing the quick races at a later date. For now, we are just focusing on the time trial. So as you saw during that little introduction bit, the first time trial we're going to be doing is here at the Midfield Raceway. We have the Lotus Motorsport lease, and these time trials essentially work like the ESC licenses do. You can't go on the grass. Otherwise you will fail the time trial. You've got to be a certain time. Unlike in the time trials, however, you have to sort of remember what the times are during them, which can get a little bit difficult. I can't actually remember what it is for this Elise. I believe it's a 1:23. We'll see towards the end. But yeah, it's the first few of these are pretty darn simple, really. The time limit isn't too strict. The tracks aren't too long. So that's always good. Of course, Midfield Raceway is a track which I know quite well. This one did take 1 or 2 attempts. The Elise can be a little bit of a tricky car to get a hang of, but once you do, it's pretty straightforward to go ahead and smash the times on this. So as you can see, if we go across the line, there you go. It will give us the finish, and then it will tell us that we have placed first. There you go, new record. And that's sort of how you know you've beaten the limit. Next up, time trial, Trial Mountain with the MX-5, 149.025 to beat. This is, of course, an NB MX-5. Yeah, we will be going through the quick races at some point. They will all be live commentary and done on stream. I'm probably going to do those after I finish off the beginner events within the career mode. Now, the one reason I did want to do the time trials before anything else is because you do actually get a prize car from these time trials, which you will see towards the end. Now, admittedly, the prize car won't serve too much use for these first few races that we're going to be doing, but it's still kind of nice to have, and yeah, I just decided why not lump this in with the rest of the license tests. In my opinion, this particular time trial here, the Trial Mount one, is the easiest of the bunch. You can see I make a right cock up there. Coming into the tunnel, I just mess the corner up a bit, the rear end of the car kicks out, which you don't particularly want to happen. But this is by far and away the easiest of them. You can actually relax when taking this time trial, pretty much. Just drive the car at relative pace, and you'll be about there. The MX-5, very easy car to control, very easy car to drive, of course. It's only got 160 horsepower. While it may be rear-wheel drive, it really, unless you're a proper idiot with a car, i.e. how I was earlier, you won't kick the rear end out on this thing. You don't really have to worry about that too much. The MX-5 is a solid car no matter what game it's in, and this time trial really does prove it, because, yeah, it's a solid car to drive around this one. Trial Mountain's a pretty cool circuit as well. It is a bit long for the MX-5, but it's a pretty easy, memorable course with some interesting corners here and there, but it's not particularly difficult. As you can see, I smashed the time by about something 0.5 of a second. There we go. Next time trial is the Tokyo R246. 202.6 is the time to beat, and the car it gives us is the Spoon S2000. This one did actually take quite a few attempts. I'm not particularly good when it comes to Tokyo R246. It is a tricky course to get used to. Of course, this was the first time it appeared in the Gran Turismo games here in GT3. The S2000 itself is a good car. You will push it around here. As the one thing with these time trials is you will find out how much you really have to push the cars sometimes. With the S2000, I certainly had to sort of push it, to its limits and even beyond it at some certain points. As good a car as the S2000 is, there are limits to it. There's limits to every car eventually. As you can see, the on my ghost time I actually did end up clipping that wall there, and that did cost me a few vital seconds. Of course, clipping walls in GT3 is actually it does penalise you a bit more than it did in previous games in GT1 and 2. You can sort of hit the walls in the time trials as long as you don't go like full flat face first into them. Sort of a good tactic to take with these time trials is if you are going to have to hit a wall for whatever reason, sometimes it can actually be quicker, you know, to sort of go quick through the corner and tag a wall than to just slow down enough to take the corner properly, i.e. there. You want to try and hit the wall with the side of the car or the rear of the car because it won't fail you. If you hit it with sort of, think of your car sort of how you think of headlights, like there's a cone, essentially, and as long as you don't hit your car with the sort of front cone, you'll be fine. As long as you hit it from the side or the rear, you should be able to pass those. You know, you'll be able to get away with smacking the walls, as long as you don't do it too ridiculously hard. As you can see though, eventually dividends did pay off, and pretty decent time actually, 201.111. Which is of course gonna result in a pass, but as you saw there, I really had to push the car. Deep Forest Raceway R34 126.3 is the time to beat. This one is a bit tricky, although the good news with this particular time trial is, well, first of all, this track is pretty short, so if you do cock up, you don't really have to spend a lot of time getting to the point where you cocked up, and you sort of you don't cock up as much if it's a sort of short track, because there's sort of the less time you're on track, the less time you could really make an error, if that makes any sense. And the R34 is a relatively forgiving car. It's not bulletproof by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, it's certainly not bad in that regard. As you can see, can sort of tag the wall there. I think it was sort of only a minor impact, so I didn't get too angry. To be fair, the S licenses themselves don't get too angry either. I have no idea how I did not fail the time trial there. Usually that would result in a fail. I don't know if it's... I just managed to leave a wheel not on the grass, but I'm fairly certain I got failed there a few times by taking that a little bit too wide, so I managed to somehow get away with it on this one. Again, I do cock up a little bit into there, maybe take that corner a bit too wide. But ultimately do get away with it. Round this final corner, you essentially just want to try and flat the car out as much as you can. You can do a little lift, but you do want to try and take that corner as flat out as you can in order to set the best possible time. Even then, you saw how hard I pushed the R34, but barely even made the time limit there. So yeah, there is leaps and bounds there. Laguna Seca with the GTS R concept car 123.1. This one is extremely tricky. The Viper isn't the most controllable car in the world. Don't get me wrong, I love the GTS R. But you know, it's a hell of a lot more powerful than the previous cars we've just had. And above that, Laguna, you know, driving Laguna in GT3 is not like driving Laguna anywhere else. And it's almost the same in Gran Turismo too, a little bit. You can really flat out through these corners. You know, if this was a later Gran Turismo game or a Forza game or something, you'd be braking through those two corners. In this car, you're just essentially lifting off. It's a weird thing to get used to. Yeah, the Viper can be problematic. Another thing, this car does not like the curbs or the sand. If you get a wheel on there, then, you know, goodbye to the car. Corkscrew is a huge issue as well. As you can see, even here, I do cock it up a little bit, but just about take it fine. You want to essentially fly off that corner if you can get away with doing so. As we round the second to last corner, not too bad through there. You know, certainly you could improve in these times. Oh, I must point out, for the North American release, similar to the S licenses, these time trials can actually be a bit easier in the North American version of the game. Just about scrape that time limit even there. But yeah, in the North American versions, and maybe, I mean, the Japanese versions probably have these same time limits. Also, Castrol Supra 118.5 around Apricot Hill. This one's pretty darn easy. But as I was saying, in various releases of this game, these times are a little less strict. I remember seeing the North American version, you usually get about 3 or 4 more seconds depending on the track, to actually set these times. So if you're in the North American release of the game, you shouldn't really have an issue when it comes to these. You know, they should be pretty easy. For us Europeans, though, this is certainly a bit of a harder task, especially the final time trial, which we will get to later on. Anyways, as you can see, my Ghost is actually a hell of a lot quicker through the first part of the course, but I believe, I can't remember where it was, I do cock up, or the Ghost cocked up at one point. So, you know, you could definitely be quicker than I am being around this track, you know, easily. But for the purposes of this, I believe it was through these corners here. Yeah, I went wide and sort of lost the car, unfortunately, on the Ghost run. So you could definitely be quicker through there. You don't need to be. But you could certainly take Apricot Hill quicker. I mean, hell, I did until I ended up cocking up, so yeah. It's pretty straightforward run. The Castrol Supra is a nice car to drive. Just nicks the time limit as well. 118.5 I believe was the benchmark, so yeah, not too bad though. Grand Valley Speedway, the NSX JGTC car, 149 point something. I can't remember what that said. I think it's like 5. You can go back and have a look if you want. To beat in the NSX race car. Again, another JGTC car, which means that it is good handling, but you do not want to mess with this car. Otherwise it will throw you into a wall. Take a little bit of a drink there, because this is going to be an awfully long commentary session. 22 minutes, yeah, of rambling over this. So, yeah, the time, as I said, the time trials aren't particularly exciting in any way, shape or form, but they need doing. They do give you a pretty swagging prize car for finishing them as well, which is always a good bonus. The NSX, as you can see, I do cock up a little bit during this track. You might notice there's no Ghost. I can't remember if I had come off the game and come back on it to finish these time trials, or didn't make it around the course on the previous time. So Grand Valley Speedway is not my favourite track in the game. I do have to admit, I don't hate it as much as I used to. The way I sort of think of this track is similar to the way I think of something like Suzuka or Mugello in both Forza and Gran Turismo, actually. You know, it's sort of a track where it's kind of longish. It's not really my cup of tea, but it isn't too bad. And as you can see, it's relatively easy to do. Again, if you know Grand Valley Speedway, this time trial should not be an issue to you. It was a bit of an issue to me just because I don't particularly know this track very well. But, you know, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for you if you know what you're doing on this track, which of course I didn't. 148.9, so I do beat the target time by a relative margin. Swiss Alps with the Impreza prototype car, 123.7. This one is quite difficult, actually, I will say. Sort of, with the way rally tests are in this game, you'd expect this one to be, you know, relatively easy, but no. It's no fault of the car. The prototype Impreza is a very usable rally car, probably one of the best ones in the game, save for, of course, the Escudo. It's just, you have to get everything right on here, and as you may have heard me say before, I am not particularly good when it comes to rally driving on these sort of games, or any game really. I'm not particularly good when it comes to rally driving. I would like to get used to it, so that's sort of why I try and play a bit of dirt rally to get myself a bit more used to kissing the dirt, but yeah, it is a bit of a problem for me. So this Swiss Alps test will sort of test me, almost. It tested me a bit. Not my favourite one to do. The place where you lose the most time is this sort of last section here. So just trying to figure out how to take it. You know, you can take it really wide and take a lot of speed, or you can take it tight and take a bit less speed, but you don't really know which one's quicker. I found sort of a good medium is the best way to go around there, and that last corner as well can be a bit of an issue as well. I just about nix the target time for this one, thankfully. So there we go. Yeah, the Swiss Alps one, a little bit, it is problematic, certainly. when it comes to that one. Speaking of dirt, Tahiti May is 159.9. I do know for a fact in the North American version this one is a bit more lax. I believe it sits at about a 202. So as you can see by my best time, I should have been able to nix this, but whatever. Again, no fault of the car. Evo 7 is of course about as good a rally car as you can get, similar to the Impreza prototype. You know, they both drive pretty darn similar. I'd need to drive both of them again to really give you an opinion on which one's better, but we're not here to decide which one's better. We're here to sort of just see how well I took the time trials. As you can see, sort of a sliding approach through those first few corners is the best way to go. You can take them sort of tight and use first gear, but you really don't want to do that. Sort of when it comes to rally driving, actually all the Gran Turismo games, essentially second gear is almost your drift gear, essentially, if you like to think of it that way. The car will usually get sideways in second gear. You know, third and fourth, use them for the straights, but second you can usually start kicking the rear end around. First gear does let you do that to an extent as well, but I would not recommend using first gear within these sort of time trials, just because if you're constantly sort of shifting around it will cost you some time. So I basically stayed in second, and you know that did me relatively well, as you can sort of see. Again, you sort of want to drift through those corners. It's sort of counterintuitive as it is to say, you know, drifting is quicker, because it isn't when it comes to these sort of games. On dirt, yeah, drifting is definitely sort of the way you kind of want to drive the cars. You do want to throw them about a bit. Ironically, this like section of Tahiti Maze often gives me issues, just because you sort of come from the dirt onto the tarmac and then you instantly find your car has a lot of understeer. This corner here is like deceptively tight, and even this one here, you know, this should be a quick right left, but it really isn't. You know, it's it does cause more issues than you would expect. Again, they're very, very close to the time limit there. Really, I am not good at rally racing. And finally, we have complex string in the Rough RGT. This one requires you to set a 449. In the North American release, it is a 453, I believe. Which, as you can see, I would have beaten long ago. This time trial is the worst one of the bunch. This one is stupid difficult. First of all, complex string is a long track. I actually like complex string, to be honest with you. It's a very fun track to drive around. However, yeah, after seeing it for the 50th time, it does get a bit irritating. You have to... The worst bit about this time trial is sort of like most of the other time trials, you have to get everything right, and you really do here on complex string, which is a bit of an issue when you consider how long the track is. You know, 5-minute lap times. It's sort of like asking you to do everything really well on something like the Nürburgring. You know, I'm sure there's people who can do it, but those people are not me. The RGT is a decent car to drive. Certainly it has got 4-wheel drive, which is nice, and not just rear-wheel drive. I would not recommend first gear in this vehicle, or indeed many of these vehicles at all, just because usually when you stick it into first gear, they will start spinning up their rear wheels, which is not something you really want to happen. It is a difficult time trial, this one here, and yeah, certainly caused me some issues. The car itself, though, thankfully, is not an issue. If it was something like the Viper GCSR around here, I'd probably still be here doing this now, because that car would be incredibly difficult to drive around here flawlessly, but there you go. Yeah, shame about the fact that this time is sort of longer, this time that I have to achieve is tighter than it is in the North American release. I don't know why they did that. With American players aren't good enough, which is strange for them to assume that, but you never know. I'm fairly certain Europe got the same times as the Japanese version of the game did, or maybe the Japanese has slightly tighter times. I'm not quite sure how it works, but I can tell you for certain these times are tighter within the European version. This particular part of the course did cause me some issues. You know, I was sort of deciding what gear to go with. In the end, I sort of went for a high second, sort of try and keep it in second as long as possible strategy. You know, I was using the third gear quite a lot on the practice runs, but that was inducing understeer. So I just decided to go for sort of try and keep it in second as long as you can, and then sort of through the latter half of this section just stick it in third and hope for the best, essentially. And that's really all you can do with complex string. You can learn certain bits of track, sure, but most of it's just a case of hoping that it goes as well as you'd like it to. This corner is pretty much flat out, so that isn't really an issue. However, we are coming up to my simultaneous worst and favourite bits of this course, because this is the bit where I went wrong the most. However, this is the most fun part of the course. You sort of get these quick left-right hills, which are very fun to drive down. I would recommend trying to take as much speed as you possibly can. You are not flat out through here by any stretch of your imagination. But you can be pretty quick. You can be quicker than I was being. The other issue is you've got to try and keep the pace up around here. You can't really afford to brake during that, otherwise you'll lose a hell of a lot of time and probably crash. You know, you've sort of really got to find a rhythm with that. It's like the slalom section at the start of the course, essentially, except it is a lot wider and a lot more deceiving than that particular section of course. The worst bit about complex string is once you've sort of driven it and you drive it again, it is very easy to find a few seconds, but after a while, you know, when you're trying to find, you know, you sort of, when I started doing this, I had a time close to 5 minutes, and that's fine. You can clamp down on that pretty easily. You know, you can set the next time's going to be 5 seconds quicker, the next time's going to be 3 seconds quicker, but it's trying to find sort of those last 2 seconds that can be an absolute nightmare. Through here, I just sort of let it buzz off the limiter. You can change up to 4th, but again, this is another corner which is tighter than you might imagine. And then once you're on there, it is a sprint to the finish line to try and get there in time. And as you can see on this run, I finally did, just as we get across. There we go, boom. And, you know, that wasn't even by much. You know, I only just nicked the time on that, so very difficult time trial indeed. However, now that they're all done, we do get a prize car from completing the time trial mode, and the prize car is the Panos Sprante race car, which is actually worth a hell of a lot of money. So that's why I always say try and do the time trials at the start of the game, because yeah, that car is worth a lot of money. So there we go, that is the time trial part of the game done. I'll just quickly jump back into the Gran Turismo mode to show you the progress meter, and then we will end it here. So, thank you all very much for watching, friends. My name's been the Real Emile. Join me for the next part, which is all going to be live commentary, and we're going to start getting into the beginner races, so join me for that. Anyways, friends, thank you all very much for watching. My name's been the Real Emile, and until next time, farewell.